There is going to be a big event tomorrow taking place at the Capitol in Boise. I got heads up on this yesterday from a couple of different sources. The people who are backing, they would like the state to, especially the state of Idaho, to back down on its latest position on refugee resettlement and reopen the floodgates so that we can bring people in here. You know that, of course, Governor Otter is opposed and has been officially, I guess, since the release of a letter about this on Monday afternoon, despite the fact he told us last month, in fact, that he wanted this thing at least put aside for a time, a moratorium, if you will, on the program until we sorted it all out. And then, of course, the big terrorist attacks 1 week ago in Paris, France, brought religious faith to a lot of people, not of the church kind or the mosque kind or the synagogue kind, but similar to that, in that suddenly a lot of people who beforehand were saying, well, we need to be compassionate and do all of this for these people, and if we were in that situation, we'd want someone to do it for us. And a lot of those people now have simply said, oh, wait a minute, which is what we were telling them all along. It didn't matter that after what happened in Tennessee, where you had a military recruiting station shot up. Nope, they dug their heels in. It didn't matter what happened at a number of other places, California. You had a kid chasing people down with knives a few weeks ago. But as soon as there was this bloodbath, and I mean extensive bloodbath halfway around the world, suddenly people said, you know what? They're not conceding that our warnings were actually right. They're looking at that, though, and suddenly they're saying, wow, this might be a problem. Not acknowledging, of course, we'd already been saying that for a long time. So this group is planning this 11 o'clock gathering outside the state capitol. You'll have all the media there. TV, newspapers and the like, and lots of bloggers will be there to tell you how just and righteous it is and how awful it is that so many bigots live in the state of Idaho and so many of them are serving in government. And so another group has decided it's going to do a counter-demonstration. Actually, it seems to be a number of groups that are coming together who have been arguing all along that this is not a really good idea right now. So 11 o'clock tomorrow, these two groups are going to be taking opposite sides in Boise. Now, the weather, they're going to do this rain or shine, but I can assure you right now it looks as if the weather is going to be shine. It looks like it's a great day as far as the sunshine, and it's not going to be terribly warm, but 40 to 45 degrees, most of us can easily take that this time of year. So if you're interested in going, and I don't know what side you're on, I suspect most of the people listening to this program are still in the opposition category. You will be going for that reason. There may be a handful of people who monitor this show just so they can report back the truth to the liberals, and they may be going as well. 10 minutes now after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Big hearing about this in the U.S. House of Representatives yesterday. Congressman Raul Labrador from northern Idaho happened to be there and says he supports refugee resettlement, but not a flawed program.
The mission, however, that we have with humanitarian concerns must not come at the cost of our national security. With recent testimony from both FBI Director James Comey and Attorney General Loretta Lynch that the administration is not able to properly vet incoming refugees, Congress has a duty to act. We're not acting out of just plain fear based on, a few members of Congress just talking to each other. We're acting after we have had testimony after testimony after testimony from our top national security experts telling us that we have a problem with the vetting process.
And that has been going on for the last several months. So, this is not a surprise. Meanwhile, he was speaking with Ann Richards. She is an Assistant Secretary of State for Resettlement Issues. Take a listen to the exchange.
Ms. Richard, you reference an intensive security screening that all refugees must undergo prior to admission. Do you think that the current vetting system is appropriate?
Yes, I do. It's the toughest one for any traveler to the United States, Congressman.
It's the toughest one, but do you think it's sufficient for the current crisis that we're in?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because anybody we have any doubts about, anyone who we think might pose a threat to the United States in any possible way is not allowed to come in.
Labrador was not having any of that and pointed out that there are differences in the way that the program operates.
With Director Comey's testimony that it is not sufficient when processing that population due to intelligence gaps.
May I answer that question? Because I have given this some thought. What Director Comey doesn't say is that it is normal for the U.S. government to have no information about
That's not
refugee
true.
applicants.
He was here in this committee, and he testified that there was a huge difference between the Syrian population
And
and
the
the
Iraqi.
Iraqi
And the
population
reason
because
for
we
that
had
is
intelligence on the Iraqi
correct.
population.
And the reason for that is Iraqis and Afghan programs were not like the normal refugee programs. We take people who have served for the U.S. military and have worked alongside our troops from Iraq. So there is a great deal of information about them available to the
So,
FBI.
reclaiming
Normally,
my time.
you
Reclaiming
would
my
not
time.
have that.
No, reclaiming my time. He has testified again and again and again that we don't have sufficient vetting. I trust him, with all due respect, a lot more with my national security than I respect you.
What she just said is we have a lot of detail about people who helped us out in the war in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Of course we do. And we have to protect them. Otherwise, our reputation around the world, we would never get anyone to cooperate with us in a war zone again. She just admitted that we don't have any information, though, about the Syrians. We have a telephone caller with us. The number, if you'd like to reach us today, 736-0300. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. And right now, we've got a temperature. Wow, look at this. 32. It's 13 minutes after 8 o'clock, and you're up next. You're on the air.
A few minutes ago, you said that if we found ourselves in the same boat, we would want somebody to help us. Well, I will never find myself in that boat. We know that the majority of these refugees, quote unquote, are young, healthy men.
Well, hold on a moment. When I said find ourselves in the same boat, I'm paraphrasing what we're hearing from the other side.
Well, I'm just saying, okay, I won't find myself in that boat because I'm going to fight. If somebody attacks my country and somebody tries to force me to do things that are against my religion, I'm going to fight.
But couldn't you
And
go
if
to
I
Germany?
die, so be it.
Couldn't you
But
go to
I'm gonna
Germany?
fight.
Couldn't you go to Germany and get a free apartment and a job and some food stamps?
No,
That's what a lot of them are doing.
I'm going to fight for my country.
Amen. Hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. 736-0300. 736-0300. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Could I add something quickly? This gathering in Boise tomorrow, too, as well. They have been requesting that people bring along, old coats and things like that can keep people warm. Because while this government, this federal government is looking to help these poor souls out, as they would describe them, we have homeless veterans all over the place. We have a homeless problem in this country. If Ronald Reagan was president, it would lead the evening news every day. But with the Democrat as president, it gets swept under the rug and it gets ignored. So they're asking that people, and you don't necessarily have to bring them up to the Capitol steps. If you keep them in the trunk, and then when the thing is over with, they're going to be delivering these to a homeless encampment. So you could always say, "Hey, I've got some in the car." So if you're going to this thing, and you'll likely park around the big square by the Capitol building, out around the green, and when you do that, after it comes to an end, you can just say to somebody, "Hey, I've got some coats you could take out there." It shows you that there's another side to this that people constantly ignore. We've had so many people tell us we have to do it because it's the right and moral thing. Well, the right and moral thing is to take care of the people who are cold here. I just was looking at some of the weather forecasts over the next several days. It's going to be down to 20 degrees tonight here. Likely cooler even in Boise. And tomorrow it's going to be cold overnight as well. And it's going to be cold overnight from now until April. It's 8:15. We have another caller joining us. You're up next. You're on the air.
Yes, just to remind people, there in the Twin Falls School District, there's 272 homeless children at this point, and it's growing. Okay, this is a problem already that we have here. We sure as hell don't need to import more of them. And then another point. Yesterday, in Honduras, there was 6, or I've lost track now.
6 and a 7th guy arrested just out, I think, Costa Rica or somewhere.
Yes, okay, the Syrians. Then the ones the 8 that were arrested on the border, and then this morning, the ones that were arrested in Arizona, Afghanis, and whatever else that were arrested in Arizona, and of course this action in Valley. I'm telling you, The world's burning down, and Obama's in Philippines wearing a funny shirt. See ya.
Thank you much for the call. It's 21 people, if you count them up, between the two groups that were seized at the southern border and then the group that was seized down in Central America. What were they up to? Maybe they were just coming to look for a job. I mean, we don't know that yet. We'll find out. Well, maybe they won't tell us the details. We've been hearing Mr. Obama say that it's shameful to say that we need a religious test for refugees. Andrew McCarthy, writing at Accuracy in Media, he's also a columnist for National Review and a former federal prosecutor. He said, but in this case, the law does require a religious test. And the reason for that is obvious. Asylum law is not a reflection of the incumbent president's personal sense of compassion. Asylum is a discretionary national act of compassion that is directed by law, not whim, to address persecution. Who are the most persecuted people in that part of the world? Christians. There is no right to emigrate to the United States, he says. And the fact that one comes from a country or territory ravaged by war does not by itself make one an asylum candidate. War, regrettably, is a staple of the human condition. Civil wars are generally about power. That often makes them violent and for many tragic, but it does not necessarily make them wars in which one side is persecuting the other side. In the case of this war, the Islamic State is undeniably persecuting Christians. So once again, U.S. law says we take into account such things and that we offer those people, they get the first seat on the plane, if you will. 818, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Daily Caller says there's some problems with that bill that was passed by the House of Representatives yesterday about this. To clarify it, it's clearly not possible for the Obama White House to guarantee every refugee from Syria and Iraq is not a threat, which the law would call for. Applicants are flagged only if they're already in the U.S. system, but that system is limited by the lack of a ground presence in Syria and Iraq. The legislation ignores the fact that refugees, immigrants, and naturalized citizens from countries other than Syria and Iraq have been arrested in the U.S. on terror-related charges. That's another thing we have to keep in mind. You know, we've had a number of terrorist outbursts off and on over the years in this country. They've come from people who came from all over the world, mostly the Islamic world, but still from many, many different centers. This writer also says the Center for Immigration Studies is estimating the cost of resettling one refugee in the U.S. for 5 years at $64,000, the same as the cost of resettling 12 refugees in the Middle East. So the money could be better spent, putting them in countries where they might be more familiar with the dominant religious faith. Once more, it costs 12 times as much to settle a refugee in the good old USA than it does in one of those so-called Islamic republics halfway around the world. Is there an end to this madness at any point? One liberal writer at the New York Times has suddenly sided with the he's in our boat, if you will. We'll talk about that if we get a chance a bit later in the program. Bill Colley with you. It's 8:20 and 32.